As President Trump overhauls the government at a breakneck pace, the media has been breathlessly predicting a constitutional crisis.
By definition, are we in a constitutional crisis?
Dangerously close to a constitutional crisis.
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 I think this is the most serious constitutional crisis the country has faced, certainly since Watergate.
Well, the talking points appear to have gone out. Look at this. Look at these highlights. The term is all over the headlines. And then listen to this. I could not believe it. CNN guests were wildly teasing jail scenarios for Trump allies.
So far, they've been talking tough, but I think largely have complied with these court orders.
Then what's next if they do defy a court order?
First thing you would do would be to go back to the court and hold the administration or the individuals who are not complying in contempt. And there are a series of remedies that the court can order if someone is in contempt, including jailing them.
The great dilemma is that the jailer is hired by the president. The president of the United States has control over the Department of Justice. If he decides that the U.S. Marshals are not going to enforce the court order, then what is already a crisis becomes a catastrophe. Then the system is broken. It's all hell broken loose.
And he's a Harvard professor. I mean, that's Larry Tribe talking about Trump controlling the jailer. We're back to talking about jail, everyone. Except wait for it. Trump says he will abide by exactly what the courts tell him to do.
I always abide by the courts, and then I'll have to appeal it. But then what he's done is he slowed down the momentum. And it gives crooked people more time to cover up the books. You know, if a person's crooked and they get caught, other people see that, and all of a sudden it becomes harder later on. So, yeah, the answer is I always abide by the courts, always abide by them, and will appeal. But appeals take a long time.
So, Emily, I read the transcript, and he said, I always abide by the courts, number one. I always abide by the courts, number two. I always abide by it. He said this Tuesday. So why are we doing prospective segments on a Monday evening about jailing Trump and his opponents?
Because the new chapter of Trump derangement syndrome is the constitutional crisis that is his presidency, because these Dems cannot handle that he's actually doing great work immediately and Americans are happy and excited. And at the end of the day, I find it so ironic that it's the Democrats that use such ferocious, violent language, not only toward President Trump and anyone associated with him, but also regarding the courts. The president was prosecuted unfairly and frankly unconstitutionally on multiple fronts, and yet he always said, I will abide by what the courts decide, and he pointed out corruption when he saw it, but he never once said, I will buck a judgment. And yet the Dems were saying that. The Dems are doxing judges. The Dems are using that rhetoric. So to me, they can say what they want to each other. You know, constitutional crisis is the new 6'5" finance. But I'm a little tired of hearing their talking points disseminated, because at the end of the day, the thoughtful conversation that Americans want to have apparently is only on the right. And it's about where are our tax dollars going and how is our safety and security confirmed.
So Trump said he'll abide by the courts. Well, let's remember what Biden and Obama said. It sounded a little different than abide by the courts.
We are not just going to be waiting for legislation in order to make sure that we're providing Americans the kind of help that they need. I've got a pen and I've got a phone.
Middle-class families can't wait for Republicans in Congress to do stuff. So sue me.
Supreme Court blocked me from relieving student debt, but they didn't stop me.
So are those jail-worthy remarks to Lawrence Tribe of Harvard?
According to his metric and his words, yes, absolutely. You know, these are two sitting presidents who felt like they were above the law and they were openly thwarting court decrees, and that, according to Lawrence Tribe, is actionable. You know, the constitutional crisis is the new Russiagate. So all you have to do is cut and paste the phrase over the former sentences that Democrats and the media establishment were using about Trump being Putin's puppet. Back in 2017, And, you know, if Trump were on the wrong side of the law, Michael Avenatti would be in his second presidential term.
You know, and Tribe went on
according to CNN.
That's right. Tribe went on to say his remarks were not intended for Trump. I think they were for Trump allies, but the point still stands. Why do they jump to this extremity?
Okay. All right. Really? I mean, he's a professional at using his words. Come on. I think that last one is the one that really sticks in the craw of Democrats, though. It wasn't just a court. It was the highest court in our land.
Yes.
The U.S. Supreme
Yes.
Court. And President Biden thought he could just thwart that for his own political gain. And he went back and forth, and then he wasn't on the ticket for presidential, return to the White House. I mean, it's been a mess, a blank show, all the way down the road, and now they want to bring this back in. Look, President Trump just made the words Russia, Russia, Russia have new meaning. Yeah. He's done a deal to get an American home after 4 years of captivity. And I mean, who knows what would have happened had he not stepped in. And he's now ushering into play a deal to end the war between Russia and Ukraine after Russia invaded another country on Biden's watch. Yeah, he can change the meaning on this, too. He'll bring the receipts, and all of this constitutional crisis, I guess that'll have a new meaning of it's not real.
Yeah, it's also rather lazy, Charles. It's like threat to democracy didn't work during the election, so let's pop open a thesaurus. Oh, here's constitutional crisis.
Yeah.
Let's plug it in.
They've only got one page in their playbook, and it's called fear-mongering.
Yes.
That's the only play they have. It's the only thing they ever do. They're not solutions-oriented. They're not hopeful. They don't have a plan to bring people up. There's always a plan to bring people down, or in this case, put them in jail. It's almost like one flew over the cuckoo's nest, though, because it is nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And the irony of all ironies, they hate the Constitution. If they had it their way, they would rip the Constitution up. I've heard them say it's an old document.
Oh, yeah.
It's not applicable these days. That, we should blow up the Supreme Court and put 25 people on it. I mean, they hate the foundation of America. So to even utter the word Constitution is so phony out of their lips.